Hey guys, if you clicked on this video, it's because you got a favorite fishing worm that you love to throw and you're looking for new ways to rig it. So here we go. 8 ways to rig your favorite fishing worm. Okay guys, this is the baton from Riot Baits. This thing, as a wacky rig, has tremendous action underwater. It does fall slower than your normal Yamamoto Senko, but that's largely due to the resistance caused by the action of this worm. But it is a fantastic pre-spawn, spawn. I mean, any time of the year where the bass are suspended, it is a great bait. But it is not limited to a weightless wacky rig presentation. So I'm going to show you a few of the ways that you can rig the baton and utilize it on your next fishing trip. So one of my favorite ways to rig the baton is basically taking a wacky rig setup, the normal wacky rig setup, and then taking a nail weight. This is just a lead nail weight that costs pennies, and inserting a lead nail weight into the first bulbous section. Now, most of the time, I will actually break this in half, giving me a piece of lead about yay big. This is probably 1/32, and I will insert that into the head of the worm, like so. And I'm gonna push it into the plastic. I don't stop when it's like this. So if you do it like this, it's probably gonna come back out the first time this thing gets bit. So I'm gonna push it in further, basically grabbing further down the bulb until I can pull the plastic up over it, hiding that lead nail weight. And now the worm will fall slowly like this. It'll still catch a suspended bass, but it'll also act a lot like a shaky head and give a fantastic and different presentation on the ground. The beauty of a Neko rig, particularly on areas where shaky heads are effective, is you're gonna be able to skip this just like a wacky rig. So you're gonna be able to get under pontoons and under docks that guys that are throwing a normal shaky head just can't reach. And it's gonna give that similar presentation. And because it is so different than a shaky head or a wacky rig, you're gonna get bites that, you know, other guys just don't. So when this thing is on the ground and bouncing, it's, you know, you're holding this up, and the large bulbous section is basically wagging the dog in front of those fish's face. So it's a fantastic way to rig the baton. It is one of my favorites, and the Neko rig is a permanent fixture on the deck of my boat year round. So if you like to fish around a lot of brush piles or shallow buckbrush, weedy environments and things of that nature, obviously rigging a worm wacky rigged, even with a weedless hook, can be problematic and frustrating. Now, conventional Senkos, when rigged Texas style, don't have any action when they fall. And that's where the baton very much differs. The baton, when it's rigged on a 3/0 EWG, will fall with a pronounced flutter. Now, it's not quite the same action as it has when it is wacky rigged, but it is very lifelike. It is much like a swimming bait fish or a small snake or something of that nature. And it provides a fantastic way to basically give fish in buckbrush a wacky rig presentation while still being able to get your worm in and out of that buckbrush or weedy environment much more efficiently than you would if it were on a normal wacky rig. The other benefit now for guys that prefer it allows you to your standard use shaky head line and throw it on a bait caster, regardless of whether you use the EWG shaky head advantageous like this one. This is the Riot Fidget. It's basically a cross between a Ned head and a shaky head. It's essentially, well, I mean, I guess I would call it a weedless Ned for all practical purposes. But all you do with this, with any EWG hook, is you'll insert your worm until, you know, there's a straight section until right about there. Slide it on through and just kind of rotate that worm up and in. And if you notice, this thing's perfectly sized to fit that baton. It takes up one bulbous section. I'll text pose it so that it's completely weedless. And now this little bait will essentially slide and glide its way down. And this falls very much like a Ned, but it is going to give a more shaky head presentation. I just like this because, man, shaky heads are far from weedless and far from easy to kind of navigate through a brush pile. So this thing kind of slides through those brush piles a little bit easier. I like to use lighter weight simply because using a little 1/8 ounce head like this is a great way to navigate the brush piles and kind of slide a worm in and out. So, but whatever shaky head you use, obviously the baton is fantastic. Just rigged as a standard shaky head worm. Now, you northern guys are probably very familiar with this. This is the panic button from Riot Baits. This is our version of the Ned. Tungsten, so you're gonna be able to feel more bites, and it uses the same exact hook of our acclaimed Little Creeper jig. So this thing, unlike some other brands, this is a freaking dynamite Ned rig, and you're not going to have the hooks breaking and bending out the way you will with some other brands. So this is the panic button. Now, you could obviously thread the baton onto the panic button, but that's not what we're going to be doing. We're instead going to just pop off a bulb, boop, and we're going to thread the middle section and tail section onto our panic button to create that little doodad. Now the beauty of the panic button, again, made out of tungsten, you're gonna feel more bites, but it also has some additional properties that may get you more bites in certain situations. And that is because it is so much more dense than lead, it makes a significantly different
So there it is, a panic button
when it comes in contact with
with
hard
a
bottom.
cut down baton to make the
I
ultimate
definitely
Ned
believe
rig.
in certain circumstances
So far
that
less
will elicit
common
strikes that
way
you
to
otherwise
rig up
wouldn't get with a lead
a
Ned
worm
rig.
of any sort is with a Mojo Rig.
What is a Mojo Rig?
Well, a Mojo Rig is basically a lighter and much simpler setup to a Carolina rig. Oftentimes it's thrown on a spinning rod, but it involves just lighter weight, but similar presentation to a Carolina rig. So generally on a Mojo Rig, I'm rigging it on a spinning rod, and I'm using a lightweight, and I'm talking 1/8, 3/16 size weights. I seldom go above that. Actually, I never go above that. Some people do, but I just don't feel the need to do that in that situation. I feel that the slower fall often gets more bites. But essentially all you're doing is threading a bullet weight onto your line, and how I rig it is I actually just simply thread on a bobber stop, and I'll slide that bobber stop up the line to create the desired length of my leader. And I generally keep it relatively short, and when I say relatively short, we're talking about 18 to 24 inches. So we don't get too crazy like some people do with the Carolina rig, but that is how I set it up. And then I'm using a EWG. For the baton, I use a 3/0 EWG, and I will cast that out and then drag it across flats generally during the pre-spawn period of time.
Now the Mojo Rig originally was rigged with split shot. It's sometimes called the split shot rig. The problem with crimping a split shot onto your line is you run the risk of damaging your line. Running a bullet weight a tungsten bullet weight, you're going to get some extra sensitivity. With this bobber stopper, they're never going to feel the weight. And it works much more like a Carolina rig. Fish can grab the lure, pull that away without ever feeling the weight there. So that is how I rig an improved Mojo.
Now, the baton, like any other worm, can be easily rigged Texas rigged. And how I personally do it is when I'm using the baton in a Texas rig manner, I am using a lighter weight. I don't like to use a heavy overpowering weight on that worm. So again, 1/8 to 1/4 ounce. And I'm generally using a Texas rig in a weedier environment, whether I'm fishing hydrilla, shoregrass, you know, eelgrass, or Eurasian milfoil, which kind of dominates those northeastern lakes. And in that situation, I actually will peg my weight with the baton. I actually peg my weight 90% of the time. So I will use a bobber stopper, and I'll thread that on the line before putting my bullet weight on. And then I will simply attach a worm hook, usually a EWG 3/0, and then rig the baton accordingly. And you know, I'll use that in lieu of a shaky head in weedy environments, just because it tends to slide through the grass cleaner than a shaky head will. So I really debated about showing this next technique simply because I've kind of kept it secret. Now, I've used this a lot up north in Eurasian milfoil, and it is a technique that has been in my wheelhouse for a very long time, and that's the power shot. Now, there are companies out there that are basically, you know, trying to sell a rig. They're calling the power shot. That's not a true power shot. A true power shot is essentially a drop shot, but on heavier equipment. I'm throwing a true medium heavy flipping stick, and I have 30 or 40 pound braid attached to a 20 pound fluorocarbon leader with a heavy wire 3/0 EWG hook and a 1/2 ounce weight. Generally, the 1/2 ounce weight is about 8 to 10 inches below the hook. So that thing's going to suspend up in eelgrass. It'll suspend off the ground, and it allows me to quickly target specific holes in the grass, and it gets down there quick. And then when the fish actually bite it, I can pull them out because I'm using heavier equipment. I don't have to worry about line breaks and you know, that sort of thing that you typically have to deal with if you are using a lighter you know, if you're using a lighter spinning rod with lighter line and that sort of thing with a normal drop shot. So the power shot is definitely a rig I use around brush piles down here. I use it around dock pilings. You know, I don't use it on the southern end of Lake Norman where it is clear, but mid-lake and above, I definitely don't worry about water clarity and the line and them seeing the line. I mean, even in the clear water, I don't notice that the fish are really line shot here. So, but the power shot is a fantastic way to get a bait into some gnarly stuff and still get those fish out. There it is, guys. 8 different ways to rig your favorite worm. And hopefully your worm can do all the things that the baton does. I'm pretty damn sure it can't, but if it can, great. If it cannot, obviously give it a try. I designed it for a bet that we couldn't produce a worm that had more action than a Yamamoto Senko. Pretty damn sure I proved that friend of mine completely wrong. The baton is an awesome worm. I'm sure you'll enjoy it, but hey, hopefully you learned something from the video. If not inspired by the baton, then hopefully one of these rigging options inspires you to try something new out on your favorite body of water. So until next time, guys, we'll see you out on the water.